The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, figuring they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
So if you listen to this show on a somewhat regular basis, you know that I rarely have guests on and almost never have a guest in the studio. I've turned it into kind of a magazine show like what Jay Reynolds does overnight and does it so well here. I like to pick out the choice parts of interviews and play them for you and so forth. But we got a real treat today. Scott MacFarlane, who is the justice correspondent for CBS News, asked if he could come in. I am really honored by that and looking forward to 10 o'clock. We'll spend most of the hour here talking about sports and his career and a radio series that he has been doing for CBS, which I think is just fabulous. And I've got a couple of ideas for him for future reports on that. But we'll do that at the 10 o'clock hour. In the meantime, we got a lot of stuff to get to on this day before Thanksgiving, including a game that ended at a reasonable hour last night, but one that you probably didn't watch to the end. That was the Maryland game against Gonzaga. Now, they're playing in this tournament in Vegas, and I found out a little bit about it. The main thing that you have to know is you get a lot of money. It's called the Players Era Championship, and it's, I think, got 12 teams, maybe 16 teams this year, and Maryland is playing 3 games in roughly like 60 hours, something like that. They had a game that started at midnight the other night, and they overcame a terrible first half. They had 15 turnovers, but managed to beat UNLV. So that set up a matchup with 12th-ranked Gonzaga last night, and it started at a reasonable hour Eastern time. It was 6:30 West Coast time and 9:30 here, but realistically, it was probably over about 10:15, and Maryland was really never in it. They lost 100-61, and as close as they got was 9 points with less than 3 minutes to go in the first half. But Gonzaga hit a 3 at the buzzer at halftime, so they were up 15, and Maryland got no closer than 14 in the second half, and finally lost the game by 39. And the numbers, of course, bear this out. Gonzaga shot nearly 58% from the floor, 42% from 3, while Maryland was just awful. Maryland had 18 turnovers. They got out-rebounded 39-29. They shot 36% from the field. And from 3, 5 for 21. That's 24%. So it was a complete blowout by Gonzaga in this game. And it means, if you're a diehard Maryland fan and you have to watch every game, we'll get ready for a midnight tip-off tonight against Alabama. Buzz Williams is great at making a short story long. I've been watching his news conferences since he became the Maryland coach, and he likes to go. So when asked about was it Gonzaga that good or you guys that bad last night, it takes him a while to spit out the first sentence.
They are
Come on.
incredibly good.
Yeah, there we go.
And I think relative to the infancy of where we're at, as difficult as this is, playing in a tournament like this affords us an opportunity to diagnose even more at a faster rate. And none of that is fun. But to be able to play a team that's good enough to win the national championship in the 4th week of the season, there's a lot for us to grow from. And to some degree, without being too simplistic, the best thing may be that we're going to play in 24 hours. And so without the schemes and the strategies involved in whatever that opponent will be, how will we respond to what just transpired? And so I will always give credit to the opponent. They made us not play well, but our urgency and our response in not playing well is not near at the standard that it's going to have to become.
Yeah, and as he did that last night, he didn't know that he was going to play Alabama. They had a later game, and so that's what the matchup is going to be. And what he's telling you there is we don't really have time for strategy, so we're just going to roll things out. That was the album cut of what is really the guts of what he said about the performance last night.
I thought our plan was right. Our execution of the plan wasn't great, and then it just kind of disintegrated on being able to do one or the other.
Just like the old Mike Tyson line, everybody has a plan until he gets hit in the mouth. I would say the upside of this, the last two nights, going 1-1, and even with the blowout last night, miraculously, Pharrell Payne is playing well. Not just playing, but playing well. Even in a game like this, he had 14 points. And remember, he played the other night against UNLV, which was, to me, a shock. Because if you were watching the Marquette game, I think it was about 10 days ago, it was on a Saturday afternoon at Marquette, he went down like, his hip came out of the socket. If you would have said season-ending injury as he was carted off on a stretcher, nobody would have said, oh, no, you're overreacting to that. It was really awful looking, and the fact that he only missed one game is pretty remarkable, or very remarkable. So Maryland will finish up today. They'll get on a plane and head back to the area, and then they play, I guess, some holiday time games, and then they get into the guts of the Big Ten season. And one thing about this team, we just don't know much about them. They're a totally new team. There's 15 new players, and we know that against a team like UNLV, they can be competitive, and against a 12th-ranked team like Gonzaga, they were not. And how they look as the season goes on is going to be fun to watch because, I guess with a lot of teams, maybe even most teams in college basketball these days, they're a work in progress. Nobody stays. So you put together an entirely new team in the summer. You're limited with the number of workouts you can have. You do the best you can. Then you start playing games, and that's when you really find out what kind of team you have. And the team that they have in November may look totally different by the time they get to March, and that's when you want to be playing your best. And if you are in a position in March to make it to the NCAA tournament, then, anything can happen. And that's why, we're seeing teams that nobody really pays that much attention to, like Houston, making it to the final. And Maryland, we just don't know. So 5-2. I'd say if you would have gone to Buzz Williams before the season and said after 7 games you'd be 5-2, you'd take it. They played horribly against Georgetown and lost, and they've played some games where they could have lost, like Mount St. Mary's, and didn't. And then last night clearly were overmatched. All right, let me move on to the Commanders, even though they've pretty much been off. They have their game coming up on Sunday night against Denver, and everybody wants to know, when is Jaden Daniels going to play again? And that remains up in the air. Monday, there was a news conference that Dan Quinn had, and he said it was unlikely that he's going to play because he's not taking any contact. We had not heard from Jaden Daniels. I guess he didn't even appear at the news conference on November 2nd when he was hurt against Seattle. So it's been almost a month since Jaden Daniels talked. And he was yesterday helping to hand out turkeys and other parts of the Thanksgiving meal outside the stadium and, gathered for reporters for the usual, questions. Well, when are you going to play? When are you going to play?
Day-by-day process, just kind of getting back in the rhythm of things, the flow of things.
Why is it important for you to get back out there? Because I don't know if you've been paying attention. There's a lot of fans out there, Jaden, that are concerned that maybe you go back out there and get hurt again.
I got to go out there and play football. If I'm back out there, I'm healthy and I'm ready to go. I want to be out there.
Jaden, ultimately, who makes that decision if you go out there and play?
It's a collective. It's my team. It's going to be the medical staff, the team, and it's no really discussions of anything right now. It's more so just getting back healthy and feeling back good. If I'm out there, man, I'm gonna give it my all. So it's gonna be important. As a football player, you want to go back there and play and a competitor. And that's who I am. So if I had the opportunity to go back there and play, but right now I'm really just taking it day by day and week by week.
So once we get to Monday, there is going to be some kind of debate about this. If Marcus Mariota plays well, there will be some people who say, well, let's just shut Jaden down for the rest of the year and let Mariota finish up, and we know Jaden will be healthy when training camp starts. Or others will say, Wow, that was really bad by Mariota. They got to get Daniels back in there and playing at least to make them competitive, or don't play Daniels because you want to tank for a draft pick. All that kind of stuff. I've been I've been doing these things on sports radio for decades now. It always goes like this time of year when you got a season unfolding like this one. Barry Zerluga's got to look at this today, and he takes it from an interesting angle. And you may not want to think this way since we walked off the field. I say we as fans, not we as Commanders. I never played for the team. But we as fans walked off after they got clobbered by Philadelphia, finishing up an incredible season with a quarterback who was fantastic, absolutely fantastic. And there was no question that he was the best quarterback taken in that draft. Like, whew, man, it's a good thing they didn't take Caleb Williams. Good thing they didn't settle for Drake May. Well, here we are a year later. Almost a year later, and Barry Zerluga writes this in the Post that, okay, what about now? Would you maybe prefer Drake May, or would you prefer Caleb Williams, maybe even Bo Nix, who we'll see on the field on Sunday night? He says, here is what is important about the last 6 games of a Commanders season gone awry, that Daniels not only reappears but reestablishes himself. 100% agree. 100% agree. For now, he is out because of a dislocated elbow. He's played just once in the past month. When he misses Sunday night's game against Denver, as Coach Dan Quinn says he's expected to, he will have sat out as many games as he's suited up. He has not played in 3 straight games this year, even though they have played 11 games. And Barry says this, and again, I'm on board with it. Get him out there, get him more reps, get him in rhythm, send him into an important offseason with the full confidence of his fan base behind him. Now he points out that the Patriots were 4-13 and fired a coach last year. Now they've won 9 straight. They lead the AFC playoff race. The Bears went 5-12, went completely down the tubes after the Hail Mary here. And now they're 8-3 and lead the toughest division in the sport. And they're having a year a lot like the Commanders had last year. They're winning games that they shouldn't be winning. And they're always winning at the gun, including the one they won here, thanks to the fumble between Jaden and Bill. So, what do you say now? If you could redraft 2024, would you take Drake May? Would you take Caleb Williams? Well, you wouldn't take Caleb Williams because he wouldn't be there. Would you take Bo Nix? I don't know. I wouldn't. I'm happy with the pick that they have, and it's a long career, and it's, a lot of football to be played over the next decade, and, I'm sure, all this hand-wringing about the next RG3, no, he's not that guy. He's not going to flame out. But, what about Daniels now? What do we know about him? We knew last year, as Barry said, no rookie ever completed 69% of his passes or ran for 891 yards. Just 4 rookies threw for more than Daniels' 25 touchdowns, 12 of them to Terry McLaurin. And that's been another factor in this, that McLaurin has barely played. And after the offseason drama of the contract and him saying, "Oh, I never get hurt. I haven't been hurt in 5 years." Yeah, he's been out. He's been out a lot. And this is the duo that connected 70 times for 944 yards and 12 touchdowns last year. This year, Daniels has completed exactly 7 balls to Terry McLaurin. They simply haven't been on the field simultaneously, he writes. They need more reps. They need more time. So I'm in that camp. I am in the camp to play Jaden Daniels in whatever's left of the season when he's cleared to play, whether it's 3 games, 4 games, 5 games, whatever it is. I play him. You don't play him this week because he hasn't been cleared medically to play. But once he's cleared medically to play, in my mind, he plays. Now, we have another situation with a veteran quarterback. Joe Burrow doesn't have to prove anything, and he's got a team that's not mathematically out, but realistically out of it. They're playing in Baltimore tomorrow night. And Joe Burrow, who went down in the second game, and some said, toe injury, turf toe, shut him down, get him healthy for next year, forget about it. He's back, and he is going to play tomorrow night. Louis Riddick, whose football knowledge I really admire. I mean, he is, I think, one of the really smart people analyzing football. He's worked in front offices here and I believe Philadelphia. And he knows both sides of the game. And he was on yesterday with Dan Patrick, and his opinion is on Joe Burrow, shut him down.
No. I wouldn't. I think, look, sometimes we know this. We know players need to be protected from themselves. Like the Bengals aren't going anywhere as far as 2025. And I know this is the highest form of competition when it comes to pro football, and you're being paid to do a job, and Joe Burrow's being paid handsomely. But at the same time, I'm trying to look out for his long-term future and the long-term future of the Bengals. And I don't think it's served by putting him out there in a season that right now isn't going anywhere. I just wouldn't want to risk further injury. I know he could get injured at any time. It is football. It's what he's paid to do, but I wouldn't put him out there. I wouldn't.
But he wants to be out there.
Yeah, I know.
Your fan base is paying to see him out there.
Forget it.
You can't bubble wrap him.
That's true. That is true. I understand that. But we're talking about one of the elite of the elites that, look, I guess what I would really need to know here is, and I say this I've said this numerous different times. One of the most important aspects of an organization is your medical department, your doctors, your trainers, your rehab specialists. I would actually want to know, look, what is the risk of playing this young man and putting him back out there on the football field in a season that's not going anywhere? Am I risking his long-term future that I've invested so much in by putting him back out there? What's the risk of injuring him to the degree where it compromises his long-term future with our organization? That's what I would probably wind up leaning on the most. But sitting here on the outside looking in, I would probably be like, look, we're going to look forward to 2026 with you, Joe.
That surprises me because Louis Riddick was a player. It seems to me with 17 games and with what these guys make, even with Daniels on a rookie deal, you play when you can play. If you're a football player, you play. And I agree 100% with Barry, who, okay, unlike Louis Riddick, never put on a helmet. But, you know, it just seems to me that you develop as you play games. You don't do it in the preseason anymore. Jaden Daniels played 4 plays, didn't throw a pass. So I don't see the value of developing him in the preseason. No, you got real games to develop him more as a quarterback. If he gets hurt, he gets hurt. But the 3 injuries that he's had this year, it's not like a torn ACL or a torn Achilles. These are injuries that you come back from during a season. And if he's medically cleared to play, I think you play him. And that's the attitude that Joe Burrow is taking into tomorrow night in Baltimore.
I understand why people feel that way, but if you look at it from my perspective, I'm a football player, and if I get hurt, I'm going to go through the rehab process, and then I'm going to let everybody know when I feel like I can go out there and play. I don't really know what else to say about that. I'm not going to ever go to somebody and say, yeah, I'm healthy, but I don't think I should go out there and play. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I'm not going to live my life and play this game scared of something happening. Like, yeah, something's going to happen. It's football. Guys are going to get hurt. Guys are going to get concussions. You're going to break bones, tear ligaments. It's a physical, intense game. That's part of this. And, yeah, I've had injuries. There's not a lot I can do about that. I work really hard to have that not happen, but what I can do is when it does happen, I can control how I'm attacking my rehab and attacking practice and doing everything in my power to get back as quickly as possible. That's what I did.
Yeah, 100%. 100% what Joe Burrow is saying. And that's from a guy who doesn't have to learn how to play the position anymore. Yeah, he's been in the league since 2020. What is this, his 6th year, right? So he's a veteran quarterback who has been to a Super Bowl. And he's telling you, if you're healthy enough to play, you play. You can't go out there scared. You don't worry about injury when you go on the field. If they happen, they happen, and everybody gets hurt. Hopefully it's not a serious injury. But if it happens, it happens. But I applaud what he's saying. And look, all these other guys who are out there on the field, you could say, oh, they should tank and get the best draft pick. Players don't think that way. Players, when they take the field, are trying the best they can to win the game. And so he's got teammates who are counting on him. And if he says, yeah, I'm sort of healthy now. My toe feels about 80%. But, the best thing is to shut it down and get healthy for next year. Some of these guys are not going to be on the team next year. Teams turn over. So as far as I'm concerned, Joe Burrow right on it. All right, coming up, the 50th anniversary of one of the big sports disappointments of my lifetime. But a kind of forgotten team, and that was the 1975 Golden State Warriors. We'll get to that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Looking forward to having Scott MacFarlane of CBS News in studio with us starting at 10 o'clock. The Wizards stink. Yeah, they won last night. They blew out the Hawks. Whoop-de-doo. They're 2-15. They stink. They stink. And it's hard to imagine this, but in the 1970s, the Wizards, then the Bullets, were damn close to a dynasty. It is incredible when you think about this, that they made the finals 4 times in the 70s. 4 times. Twice they got swept. Once they lost in 5 games, but they beat the Sonics in 7. And as Abe Pollin used to say, you all recall we had a pretty good year back in 1978 when they won the whole thing. And in 1975, they won 60 games. And they were favored to win the NBA championship. Finally, all coming together. Veteran players, Wes Unseld and Eldon Hayes. They've been picked 1 and 2 in the 1968 draft. And there was a great trade made where they sent Jack Marin to Houston for Eldon, and the two of them together. Phil Chenier, great shooter in his prime. They had a squad in 75. And the Golden State Warriors had Rick Barry and a bunch of other guys, and nobody really knew too much about them. And they I think, won 48 games. And they struggled in the playoffs. They managed to get by Chicago in the Western Conference Finals in overtime in Game 7. So they looked like a worn-out team when they showed up in Washington in 1975, and they swept the heavily favored Bullets 4-0. It's one of the great sports disappointments of my lifetime. I was, 16 years old then, and it mattered. It really mattered at that time to me. And it mattered to the Bullets, and it mattered to the Warriors apparently more. So now 50 years later, they are getting their due, so to speak. They're kind of a forgotten championship team. They didn't repeat or anything like that. And Charles Dudley, who's one of their players, who's now 75 years old, is putting together a documentary about that team, and it's going to be called The Cardiac Kids because they, I guess, won a lot of close games late. The 4 games here, Bullets had the lead in all of them, as I remember, and Golden State was a deeper team. They were playing 10 players, and the Bullets were shorthanded in that they had lost Jimmy Jones, who was like their 6th man in the playoffs, to a knee injury. So they were short on that, and Casey Jones was playing 6 and 7 guys, and they just got worn down by the Warriors, and Barry was by far the best player on the court. He was the MVP of the series. And, Rick Barry had an interesting career. He was the number 4 pick of the draft in 1965 coming out of Miami. Great player, first 2 years, led the league in scoring 35 points a game after the 67 season. Then the ABA comes in, and the ABA has the Oakland Oaks, and the Oakland Oaks are coached by his father-in-law. So Rick Barry makes the jump to the ABA, but the Warriors say, hold on, you still got a year left on your contract. You can't play. So he didn't play at all during the 67-68 season, and he played on a charity team with a radio station that was run by Johnny Holiday, believe it or not. So then he comes back, plays for the Oaks. They win the championship. Then they come here as the Washington Caps for a year. They played at the Uline Arena. They were losing lots of money. They went down to Virginia. He said, I'm not going to play in Virginia because I don't want my kids to say, y'all. He got traded to the New York Nets. They won a couple of titles. Then he went back to the NBA, and he finished up playing long time with the Warriors in the last 2 years with the Houston Rockets. So in discussing himself, and believe me, there is no false modesty with Rick Barry, even at the age of 83. This is what he says about Rick Barry.
I know the NBA is not happy with me. I mean, I came in the league and made first-team All-Pro, MVP of the All-Star game, led the league in scoring, did stuff, and left. I can tell you, they were really mad at me. And it changed basketball to the better because I challenged the reserve clause and opened it up for guys to be able to change teams. I mean, it was a changing factor. I was Curt Flood before Curt Flood. Everybody talks about Curt Flood. Hell, we did that in 1967 after I left. And so I'm hoping it's not that they were mad at me and they didn't want to give us a lot of recognition, but they didn't. I mean, we were so overlooked. It was hard for me to believe that we could be so overlooked.
Well, okay, Curt Flood is a little bit of a stretch there. Curt Flood sacrificed much more than Rick Barry did. And Curt Flood gave up his career. He went bankrupt. He had a lot of problems with drugs. And I mean, it was a totally different thing. And he challenged the reserve clause in baseball for sure in 1970 when he was traded from the St. Louis Cardinals to the Phillies. He didn't want to go, and he paved the way, although he lost in the Supreme Court, and he had to take it to the Supreme Court. I don't think the sacrifice of Barry was the same, but okay, he likes to pat himself on the back. He also likes to pat himself on the back for this upset. Now, it was a big upset, but I think this is a little bit of hyperbole from Barry, and they had a news conference last week when they celebrated the 50th anniversary of this championship in 1975. Listen to the extent he takes it to when discussing how big the Warriors' upset was of the Washington Bullets in 1975.
Biggest finals upset in the history of major sports in the United States. I defy anybody to point something else out that was as dramatic as what we did. It was a special group of people who came together like a family, cared about one another, played the game the way it was. We epitomized, I think, what the game of basketball should be about as far as a team goes. And it was all sports. Tell me. Everybody said, oh, no, the Jets. No, the Jets were picked to be the winners in the AFL. I mean, the Miracle Mets. No way. I mean, we were a team that people said we'd be lucky to win 20 games. So you can't find anything more dramatic than what happened, and it's the most overlooked. It's hard to believe that thanks to Hopper and working, that there's going to be a documentary. You got thanks to him, the Cardiac Kids and all our great shirts. 50 years it took. If our team had done what we did and we were in New York, they would have had a documentary the next year. 50 years overlooked. No invite to the White House. No cover of Sports Illustrated. It's really a shame. And the shame is that my teammates never got the recognition that they deserved. Because it wasn't about me. I got stuff because I was MVP. But you don't win by one person. I mean, hell, we would have never been in the finals. It was for George Johnson blocking every shot to the Chicago Bulls took in Game 7 in the Western Conference Finals. I was stinking up the building. I mean, you win because your team accomplishes it. And I don't think they've got the recognition. So hopefully this documentary will do justice to that, and these guys and the guys who are no longer with us will get the recognition they deserve.
Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, it's not the biggest upset of all time. You may be thinking in your mind, the Jets was a monumental upset. That was a changer for the entire league. Now, the Warriors did change things to a degree. They had a black coach in Al Attles, but Washington also had a black coach in K.C. Jones. It's the first time in the finals the two black coaches met up. They were playing 10 guys, and that was really the difference with Barry in that. Barry was spectacular. There are 7 players still alive from that championship team. Charles Dudley, of course, Barry, Butch Beard, who was the coach at Howard for a while, George Johnson, Jeff Mullins, Clifford Ray, and Jamal Wilkes, who later teamed up with Magic Johnson and Showtime with the Lakers. So, yeah, they deserve recognition. Do they deserve the recognition that Rick Barry thinks they deserve? No, and I know I'm biased on this, having rooted for Washington in that series. But as far as going to the White House, one of the first teams I remember going was the 78 Bullets, and that was more of a convenience thing. They had a parade that went through the streets of downtown. They rode in convertibles, and they finished up at the White House where they had a reception with President Jimmy Carter. They also, the 78 Bullets, were not on the cover of Sports Illustrated because we had a Triple Crown winner that year. I think it was Affirmed that won the Triple Crown that year in 1978. They put the horse on the cover, and Kevin Greavy's pissed about that, but, that's the way it goes. But, for Barry to go as far as he does in making this the greatest upset in the history of professional sports, maybe the fact that it was a sweep plays into it. But I'm not going to go that far. I'm not going to go that far. And it was a major disappointment. And the Bullets, when they finally won a game in the finals in 1978, after being swept in 71 by Milwaukee and 75 by Golden State, finally won a game and then went to 7 and beat Seattle. Scott MacFarlane, due to join us in studio. We'll get to that and more next. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630. I am finishing my 48th year in radio, and people ask me, what's the best part about it? Best part about it for me is intersecting with people who have reached the top of the mountain. Not just the 14 years I spent as Tony Kornheiser's sidekick, but doing shows on occasion with Mike Tirico when we were both at ESPN. I once tried to hire Ian Eagle, and he was smart enough to turn me down. But I'm about to do that again with somebody who is at the top, and I don't have to really describe what he does other than his job title. He is, the justice correspondent for CBS News, the network of Edward R. Murrow, Walter Cronkite, and 60 Minutes. I think that says it all. It's Scott MacFarlane. who cut some of his TV teeth, actually, at NBC4 and has now been at CBS News. How long have you been at CBS?
I got here just after COVID, so it was 2021. I left NBC4 and came to CBS, but I'm just a guy who couldn't cut it in radio. And TV was hiring. There was more jobs. If I could have made it in radio, I'd still be there.
Listen to that voice. Is that a voice that's not a radio voice? Come on, you got to be kidding me.
I came up on radio, and I started in radio, and I fell in love with the medium. But I hit that moment. You've seen it, Andy, where you just can't keep the continuity of employment. And television, when I came out in the late 90s, was a much more robust employer.
Yeah, it was.
So I'll go that way.
Yeah, use that word was because it's not anymore. We have connected through social media. I've been an admirer of what Scott does, not just in his, well, I guess it's all a day job, but is what you do, these reports on radio for CBS Saturday mornings, that kind of a side hustle or just a labor of love?
That's a mental health mission. If you're a journalist in Washington, the opportunity to do features and to do something lighthearted, it keeps you sane. And they give you great opportunities to do pieces for the weekend shows just to keep your blood pressure down and do something more artful.
Yeah, I want to talk about that, but it is an odd situation that we've made this connection through Facebook and Twitter, and we're meeting for the first time in this studio. So, like Eric Stratton once said at the Delta House, "Damn glad to meet you." So it's good to have you here.
Nice to be here under these circumstances, and any Animal House reference is welcome.
Yeah, I mean it's obviously a stressful job that you do on a day-to-day basis, and you are a legal correspondent, I guess is what you'd be called.
If you're covering the criminal justice system, the FBI and the Department of Justice, you have to be somebody who acquaints himself with the courts, with legal briefs, and with court filings. And I'll tell you, Andy, over the last year, we've just seen things we've never seen before. So we're all learning on the fly.
Your legal background, because I know like Chris Gordon is a friend of mine, went to law school. Did you ever?
I learned from Chris. He taught me what I know over at NBC4 about the law. Yeah. I really got enmeshed with it after January 6th. That became a full-time beat. It was the largest criminal prosecution in American history, and it happened right here in our neighborhood, Andy. Right. So we all learned from 1,500 criminal cases how the criminal justice system works. So I've got an informal bar card.
So welcome to CBS News. By the way, there's January 6th. Go cover it. Is that how that worked?
They brought me over in part to cover it. It had already happened, but I'll tell you, every single day, you lean on those radio muscles. You lean on you have no teleprompter, you get no script. They send you out there and say, in 60 seconds, you're going to be addressing the nation. Tell them what you know about this breaking story. That is such a radio thing. That is such a radio skill set. Right. And anybody who came up through radio has a leg up on everybody else because you have to have all that muscle memory that radio gives you. The names you just mentioned, Andy, you just mentioned Ian Eagle. You just mentioned Mike Tirico. You just mentioned Tony. Radio people.
Right.
And Mike Tirico started in radio. Ian Eagle started at WJPZ radio in Syracuse. I mean, these guys, they cut their teeth doing radio, and look how comfortable they are without a script, with a game playing out in front of them.
It's funny about that when you hear that from TV people, because I heard Maury Povich, who had a monster career in television, the back end of it, very lucrative. We can debate the journalistic aspect of who's your daddy. Yeah, who's your daddy? But and he married Connie Chung, who's a great journalist herself. But he said he always got nervous on radio, and he felt comfortable on TV. And for somebody like me, it's just the opposite. I've dabbled in TV. I've never had a full-time job, but I've done a lot of freelance work over the years. And sitting behind a microphone has always been very comfortable for me, whereas if there's a television camera on me, I get nervous. You obviously don't feel that way.
I think that would be the exception to the rule. I think Maury would be the exception to the rule. I think if you listen to people on television, you can hear that radio in their background. And those of us who came up through radio and have that in our DNA, we're less comfortable when they put that teleprompter up than if it's not there at all. I would prefer, if I had my druthers, to have that thing covered up. Give me the lens of the camera, and I'll sound more like myself. I'll be more comfortable going through it. And respectfully, I think those of us who came through radio, we perform without that safety net.
Wow.
And we're better without it. And you can hear that. You can hear that in Mike Tirico. You hear that in Bob Costas.
Mm-hmm.
You could hear that in the people who came up through radio, not television.
Yeah, well, Bob Costas got his start doing the Spirits of St. Louis in the ABA when he was still at Syracuse.
He didn't graduate. He went right to St. Louis after his junior year to call the ABA. He did Syracuse minor league hockey. I mean, he's a prodigy, but never needed a script.
He made his parents happy. He got an honorary degree from Syracuse, so it kind of worked out. We're talking to Scott MacFarlane, the justice correspondent for CBS News, who's been kind enough to come in today, and I want to talk about the features that he's been doing for CBS Saturday morning about radio, and then we'll get into some sports stuff as well. But let's start with your background. You're a New York guy, but not New York City, right? Small town New York?
That's right. Upstate New York, which is everything, north of the Bronx, people think is upstate New York. But I'm from the Hudson Valley, which is about an hour and a half or 2 hours north. Kind of the farthest you'd go from New York City and do a daily commute on the train.
Oh, people do that from there? Really?
They do. It's 2 hours. So
wow.
It's the version of taking the MARC train from Martinsburg or the VRE from Fredericksburg. You take the train from the Hudson Valley down into Manhattan. A lot of my neighbors' dads did that. But I'm just old enough to be one of those transistor radio under the pillow at night. Kids listening to Mets games. I mean, you listen to Bob Murphy.
Bob
call
Murphy,
the Mets on
right?
WFAN.
Yeah.
I could catch Jack Buck out of St. Louis or Bob Prince out of Pittsburgh, Ernie Harwell out of Detroit on good nights. But there are people, in their 40s who have that radio under the pillow memory of listening to baseball. And my impression was always, and it still is, Andy, to this day, regular season baseball, best consumed on radio.
Yeah.
It's a sport that is a natural fit for radio. And unless the stakes are really high, I still like to consume it that way. And I grew up developing a passion for broadcasting, listening to Mets games.
Interesting, because now every game is on television, and baseball is starting to sell pieces off like the NFL, Apple TV, and Prime and Netflix.
For better or for worse, there's a lot of inventory.
Yeah, but the point being is that people who are younger and have been used to having every game on television, oh my God, what are they doing? We don't have a Friday night game that we can't, and there's 160 others that you can watch.
I just wonder if the sport would be better off with less inventory.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's baseball was at its peak in popularity when there were fewer games. Now, you, I think, had the luxury of this, and you're younger than I am, but in New York, it's a little bit different because I had some friends who had moved down here, like when I was in elementary school, and they talked about seeing the Yankees and the Mets on TV every day, Channel 11 and Channel 9, days before cable. Whereas here in Washington, we had maybe 20 Senators games a year on. That was it. And then the rest of baseball that we saw was the game of the week on Saturday afternoon on NBC with, Gargiola and Kubek and, Kurt Gowdy.
In New York, you'd get 4 broadcast games a week. They'd give you 2 Mets and Yankees games each, and the rest would go to cable, which, in the 80s and early 90s, cable was this, this fancy thing some other kids had.
The rich kids, yeah.
We were devoted watchers of NBC at 1 o'clock on Saturday afternoons. My dad and I. He even as a young kid, I knew I wanted to get into broadcasting, so I'd watch Costas.
Yeah,
as much as Scully. All those games on Saturday afternoon and hear the storytelling.
Oh, they were great. They were great, and we also didn't have interleague play. So
it meant something.
Here, well, I after I was 13, the Senators left, but even when they were here, I didn't see Willie Mays play at D.C. or RFK Stadium. That was a cool thing to see him on TV. So that was so anyway. Off of that, you go to Syracuse, which is Sportscaster U, and you hear this voice that you have, and you would be a natural fit for any type of sports broadcasting, especially play-by-play. Was there any thought that you might go down that road?
A lot of people who get into the broadcasting program at Syracuse are doing so to become sportscasters. But it's a misnomer at the university, which is very proud of its broadcasting heritage. It's a misnomer to call it a sportscaster school. It's a radio school. Syracuse's program is different than Maryland's, different than American universities, different than Northwestern, USC. It's different because it's a radio school. And the success stories, the Mount Rushmore of Syracuse, are all people who came up through the radio programs on campus. They have a college radio station there, which I'm a devoted alum, called WJPZ, which it's not one of those corny college stations where you play your own records or you play a block of music and you talk with your buddies and you talk about nonsense. they, since it started in 1973, have mirrored it to what a contemporary top 40 station is supposed to sound like, tightly formatted. It sounds like the version of 99.5 here in D.C., of Z100 in New York, of WABC in its glory days in New York, a professional formatted radio station. Try to get a bunch of 18 and 19-year-olds to pull off that. And what you attract, like a magnet, is a bunch of radio heads, a bunch of radio geeks like me who love the format, the history, the heritage of the medium. And we're all together, the 100 of us, every year at the school. And they've continued that for 52 years. They're attracting this radio audience of students who put a radio station on the air. And so everybody's coming up through that format, and then they go into whatever the field attracts them next. Sportscasting. For me, network news. For buddies of mine, exceptional talents in podcasting, in strategic communications, in academia. But they all came up through that same funnel of radio. And let me give you a few names. It's not just Bob Costas and Mike Tirico and Ian Eagle. It's Dick Stockton, Steve Croft, Ted Koppel, Marv Albert, Dick Clark, all radio students. There was no television program for many of us. It was all radio.
Oh, even as late as you went, because I didn't realize it started in 73. I got into Newhouse, and would have been 76, so it was relatively new. And I went to American and had some of the similar experience that you had. And one of the reasons, well, it's other complicated reasons, but one of the things was because it was Washington, D.C. and all these stations around. You are now in Syracuse, New York, which could be an advantage because they have radio and television stations there. But what I experienced at our campus station, WAMU, there were older guys, and girls who were working, not working part-time or at least interning at places like WMAL, WTOP, places like that. So we learned the ropes from them as well. But yeah, those things, and that's sort of gone by the wayside, unfortunately. At least Maryland has a different type of program. But at one point, I was looking at maybe helping them out with the campus station, and I was kind of disappointed at the state that it was in. But, yeah, the eras that we had, you're a lot younger than I am, but those are things that you cut your teeth on, and you learn it. It's great, yeah.
And American and Maryland both have these very well-equipped, very capable investigative reporting workshops in their communication schools. And that helps them stand apart. It makes them distinctive, makes them ultimately very successful. At Syracuse, it's the radio foundation. And I tell you, we all have our own passions for the schools we went to. High school, college, we have our groups, we have our affinities for our sports teams, for our alma maters. If you're an active student media member, that's a whole different level of connection. Yeah. That is a passion. That is a family.
Oh, sure. That's where I spent all my time. Absolutely.
And you were with people who loved the same thing you love.
Yeah, yeah.
And they all unique passion for this unique thing, and that's inseparable.
Yeah, and a number of them had great success careers. Dave Adler, who was here for a long time, he was in my class, and my mentor there. If you stay up late and watch infomercials, Joe Fowler is one of the top infomercial people in the country. He sells saws and whatever. Now he's selling like Christmas lights and stuff like that. So anyway, that's really exactly my experience a couple of decades earlier, and hopefully that continues. But back to the original question, your love of sports. No, we got sidetracked. This is another beauty of radio. We don't have the 3 minutes that we have in television. We have hours to deal with. So you love sports. You play fantasy football with mutual friends. Was there ever a point where you said, let me pursue that?
I was keen on it for a while. And let me just button something up. I don't play fantasy sports with our mutual friends. I dominate fantasy sports with our mutual friends.
If you can't trash talk in fantasy football, you can't play.
You're not doing it right.
Yeah.
There's this moment in 1988. I'll admit I was in middle school. If you listen to both the radio call and the television call of Kirk Gibson's home run, if you listen to the magnificence of both the radio call and the television call of Kirk Gibson's home run in the 1988 World Series, it's just an alluring way to make somebody want to become a sportscaster.
Yeah.
You listen to how well Jack Buck did that call, painted that picture on radio, and if you listen to the mellifluence of Vin Scully doing anything,
right,
much less that epic moment, I think that's what made me want to become a broadcaster, a sportscaster. And obviously, when you mature from middle school to high school to college, your values shift on what you want to do with your broadcasting education or your broadcasting skill. But that sold me on it right there.
Yeah.
But that's also, Andy, back in that long ago era where baseball's prominent, where baseball's preeminent.
Yeah.
Where baseball is your first love and the thing you think of first. That obviously shifted for people in my generation in the 90s and 2000s when football became.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it took over. As a matter of fact, that in that particular case you're talking about, Scully was the national TV guy, Jack Buck was the national radio. How about the confluence of this, the perfect storm of the Dodgers playing the Braves in 1974 when Hank Aaron hit 715? And Scully the game was on NBC and Kurt Gowdy did it. The great call of Scully is the local radio for the Dodgers. And as Costas has discussed, if you sat down at a computer and spent 3 days trying to write what Scully said after the home run, and I'm paraphrasing, but a black man in the Deep South has just overtaken a baseball legend. I mean, who can do that
on local radio?
Yeah,
his skill set was a unicorn.
Yeah,
it's never been matched, and I think anybody who came up on baseball as a kid in that era was attracted to broadcasting.
Yeah,
but same goes back to the initial premise. Radio guy, true and true, through and through. When I was in college, though, somewhere we shifted to wanting to do news. I think there's an awful lot of things that happened in the 90s. It was a less toxic era, a less vitriolic era. News became very attractive. I wonder, Andy, if people going to college today are as attracted to covering news and politics and government because of
what it is right now.
Yeah. It's a toxic stew, and it doesn't matter what your political viewpoints are. It's a menacing, vitriolic, visceral stew. And I don't know if today's Maryland students, if today's AU, WAMU students really want that as much as we did in the 90s.
Yeah, well, I grew up with the sports, or helped to develop sports radio, which is a scream fest for some people. and unfortunately, it's not as important as what you cover. Scott MacFarlane is in the studio. He's going to be here till 11 o'clock, and he is the justice correspondent for CBS News. I never thought I would have a in-studio guest like that, but he's here, and I'm looking forward to talking to him about the series he's been doing on radio. And we'll do that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollard Show, ESPN 630.
Now, from ESPN 630, your DC Sports Center.
We're brought to you by NATCA, the National Air Traffic Controllers Association. They bring you home safely. Maryland's basketball team has a midnight hour team tip tonight in Vegas against Alabama. And you can thank the blowout loss to 12th-ranked Gonzaga, 100-61 in the Players Era Championship Tournament. Maryland got as close as 9 late in the first half, but the Zags blew it open at halftime. NBA, what do you know? Not just a Wizards win, only their second in 17 games, but a blowout. 132-113 over Atlanta. 46 for C.J. McCollum, breaks a 14-game losing streak. Wizards play at Indiana Friday. Both teams are 2-15. Hockey, Caps, winners of 4 of their last 5, are home tonight against Winnipeg. And Commanders quarterback Jaden Daniels, unlikely to play this week, says he wants to win ready. Washington will host Denver on Sunday night. DC weather, cloudy, high 71. Andy Pollard, ESPN 630.
Air traffic controllers guide tens of thousands of flights every day, getting passengers and cargo to their destination safely. Aviation professionals always answer the call, but they can't do it alone. We must invest in modern equipment, facilities, and controller staffing. NATCA, we guide you home.
I know that hiring can be challenging. You need someone to match your role perfectly. Well, now you can meet them fast on ZipRecruiter.
Build your team, build it sooner. Meet your match on ZipRecruiter.
Just head to ZipRecruiter.com/free right now to try it for free. That's ZipRecruiter.com/free.
Meet your match on ZipRecruiter. Try it free.
Oh, how's that flu, babe? Did you take DayQuil Intense Flu yet?
Nah, I got this. Ugh, okay, I don't got this.
You stay on the couch, and I'll grab the DayQuil.
Undo your flu symptoms with DayQuil Intense Flu. DayQuil Intense Flu provides powerful relief of your flu symptoms.
I'm ready for that to-do list.
Wow, you do got this.
DayQuil Intense Flu. The daytime coughing, aching, fever, under your flu, medicine. Use as directed, keep out of reach of children.
Being blind doesn't always look how others may think. Stargardt disease was supposed to define me.
Retinitis pigmentosa aimed to overwhelm my family.
It tried to cut me down.
A blinding eye disease attempted to force me away from doing what I was born to do.
But it cannot stop me. I have the tools.
I will keep moving forward.
Pushing past the limits of this disability.
I know where to find support and where I can be seen.
Great vision doesn't require great sight. Innovative research, educational resources, supportive community. The Foundation Fighting Blindness is leading the charge in finding treatments and cures for blinding diseases. Make your impact today. Donate now at fightingblindness.org. A public service message from the Foundation Fighting Blindness.
The Andy Poland Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
We are lucky to have Scott MacFarlane, the justice correspondent for CBS News, in the studio. We have connected over social media for my admiration of his stories, features that he's been doing on radio for CBS Saturday morning, and we'll get to that. We were talking during the break about this, so before I forget, I want to get to this. When I was in high school, my sister was friends with Vic Ratner's daughter. Vic Ratner, the legendary ABC correspondent, probably 40 years. And he invited me to come down after school to watch him work in the Senate. And among the things he showed me was his go kit, because at any point CBS would say, fly here, fly there, and he's got to be ready to go. And he had his tape recorders and his microphones and his passports and everything else that he needed. But he also had 3 or 4 of these film canisters. If you remember putting film in cameras, it came in like this little tube-like container. And in those tubes were quarters. So he could, at any point, go to a payphone and file his reports from a payphone. We have reached the point now in 2025, and I watch your reports on YouTube, and also I guess you put them out on Twitter. And do you put them out on Facebook as well?
No,
okay.
But pretty much every other platform we serve with video.
So I watched you, and you did your own work, which used to be a union violation. You couldn't even touch the machines. You pushed play on your phone, did your report, and finished up and turned it off. So that's remarkable. 50 years after I experienced what I did. What has the business become in this era versus what I saw when I was a kid?
You can't just be on television. You can't just be on the radio now.
Mm-hmm.
To get news out, you have to find every platform where people are. And it's not just that it's decentralized with streaming and with cable and cord cutting. It's decentralized in terms of just what vessel you're using altogether.
Yeah.
So what I've noted, and I think my colleagues would share this opinion, is that we can work with the whole team, Andy, all week and edit and perfect a piece of broadcast content that is at a level we've never been able to do before because of the technology, and nobody's going to watch it on social media. But if I put a phone in front of my face informally, almost in pitch black darkness, and tell you what happened a few minutes ago,
Mm-hmm.
I can get millions, because it's the informality,
right?
It's the frank, direct, one-on-one, like radio, speaking right to you, directly into the phone. I'm talking not to a broad audience, just to you, Andy, and that gets traction. It's it almost to a degree devoid of the actual content. It's just the way you deliver it can command people's attention. But it goes back to what we talked about earlier. All of that is a radio muscle. Radio is the only medium in broadcasting that is one-on-one. We're not talking to people. We're talking to a person who's listening to us right now. One person.
Right.
And social media, when done effectively, especially by these influencers, they know their audience, and they found a way to communicate individually to their audience. And the less formal you make it, the more ad hoc or improvised it seems, the more compelling it is to the audience. And that's the opposite of the television muscle, where you try to put this whole team together to manicure a piece of content and make it seem big. Social media, I think, is done best when it's made to seem small.
Yeah. Well, this is I believe your skill, and this is why you're so good at what you do. You explain complicated things in a simple manner. And I know that's something that you work on and probably relates to radio as well. But these are complicated issues that you deal with. And I'm a sports guy. Yeah, I keep up with the news and so forth. But that is something that you have in mind, right? And that comes from radio too, where in television you may be talking to an audience. 4 or 5 people may be sitting around the TV set. Radio, and this goes back to Arthur Godfrey. That's why you use the word "you" all the time.
Only use that word. Never you all, not everybody, right?
Yeah, you're talking to one person, and it's also a distracted person because nobody listens to radio just sitting down and listening to it. You'll watch TV nowadays. Of course, I guess you're scrolling your phone while you do it, but by and large, you're shaving, you're driving, you're cooking. You're doing something else when it's going on.
The great sportscasters, the ones you can picture in your mind's eye right now, Andy, employ that skill too. I think in part because it's just a good broadcasting skill, but also because, yes, people are on their phones or on their iPads while they're watching the game. Listen to Joe Buck Monday night. See how often he employs that same tool.
Mm-hmm.
Never speaks like he's talking to everybody. He says, welcome to the broadcast booth, not welcome everyone to the broadcast booth. Jim Nantz has his phrase.
Hello, friends.
But the rest of the game, he sounds like he's talking just to you. And it goes back to the foundation of radio, but I think there's also a recognition, Andy. People watching television aren't just watching television anymore. And we're using that tool too in news.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm going to go on the CBS Evening News tonight, I'm going to address the viewer singularly because I want to make sure the viewer looks up at the screen.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm speaking to a broad audience, that gives them no inclination or no desire to look up from their screen.
Wow. Is that CBS News training? I mean, I'm sure they have consultants and people that talk to you all the time. Is that part of what they do?
I think it's a foundational thing now. I think everybody recognizes you have multiple screens.
Yeah.
And you have to make sure you penetrate through there. But CBS, a strong radio heritage company,
Sure.
It's in the DNA.
Absolutely. We're talking to Scott MacFarlane, the justice correspondent for CBS News, and the reason that I was so happy to have him in, and I've never had anybody do this. He said, "Would you like me to come in?" I said, "What, are you kidding me?" So the series that I've been enjoying, and to be frank, and this is part of what you do too. I consume it on YouTube.
Yeah.
I'm doing things Saturday morning. I'm at the gym. I'm going to Home Depot, whatever I'm doing. So the convenience of having it on YouTube is there, but I've really enjoyed the features. And you talk about what you have been doing and some of the things that may be coming up.
As a side hustle from covering the Department of Justice and the Trump administration and the Congress, I've been doing a series of pieces for CBS Saturday morning about radio's history, but more importantly, radio's future. We've done 3 rather large projects, but I've done a couple here and there as well just to keep the conversation going. But what we're talking about is what's being done proactively and wisely to sustain radio and its future, because radio is inarguably the most historic mass medium in American
It's 100 years old, yeah, over 100.
It's the first, but it's also the foundational one. All great television came from radio. All the great first generation of television artists were radio artists. Radio introduced America to, the Beatles,
Mm-hmm.
to the Rolling Stones before Ed Sullivan did, to disco, to rap, to any number of news events in American history, from Pearl Harbor to the assassination of JFK. So many people heard it on radio. But radio is the American foundational mass medium. So what's being done now, we're 2025, to keep this thing going? Because clearly there's competition for your ears.
Mm-hmm.
You get in your car, do your kids even recognize the radio on the dashboard? Do they even know what that thing is?
My kids grew up in the business, but yeah, I understand what I got grandchildren now, so maybe they won't know. I don't know.
Let's shift it there. I mean, my kids of their age don't know what that thing is in the car. And obviously it's also not a visible thing in the car anymore the way it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
The dials and knobs.
Yeah.
And add in the competition for streaming, for Pandora, Spotify, podcasts. What's radio doing to maintain that heritage and that history moving forward? Let me tell you briefly about the first 2 parts of this trilogy we've done. We spent a week in West Virginia with a guy named Hoppy Kercheval. Now, Hoppy Kercheval is not a household name if you don't live in West Virginia. If you live in West Virginia, he is Dean Martin, Dick Clark, and he is the cultural
And this is
icon
Martinsburg.
of-
This is a decent-sized town, right? Yeah.
He's in Morgantown, but he's on in every city in the state.
Wow.
He was on for generations in every city in the state. He was the voice of West Virginia.
Yeah.
Talk show every day. Every politician needed to be heard on Hoppy's show to be relevant. He was part of the West Virginia University sports coverage. He was in the culture of West Virginia. We went to see him in 2022 because he was uniquely important that one year. We wanted to tell America about it. Hoppy Kercheval was the go-to guy, the everyday phone call for Joe Manchin, the senator who in 2022 decided everything. They called him President Manchin because the Senate was 50-50, Andy.
That's
It was
right.
a split.
Split,
And
yeah.
if Joe Manchin
Swing
went
vote.
for it,
Yeah.
you get the vote passed. If Joe Manchin went against it, you couldn't get anything passed. And the President Biden and the White House were in this constant battle or communication with Joe Manchin. And Hoppy Kercheval was always Joe's first call. So what we found out when we went out there, Andy, is that before Joe Manchin would come on the air for his daily spot or his weekly spot on Hoppy's show, you know how much they would sell the advertising slots for before the Manchin appearance? There'd be would-be clients from across America, national lobbyists, huge interest. Major companies wanted to get an advertisement on before Manchin was on so that Manchin could hear it in his headphones before he went on the radio with Hoppy. So Hoppy, this humble guy from Morgantown, who's on the air in Martinsburg and in Clarksburg and in Charleston, became a person the Beltway listened to every day.
Wow.
And it became this epic, iconic figure in the year 2022. Retired last year, pure radio guy.
Well, and that's that's a small market, relatively speaking, and that's called influence buys, right? Is that what they call it in the radio business?
It wasn't for the audience to hear the commercials. It was so that Joe Manchin would hear them before he'd start talking to Hoppy, and that was a novel way of doing business. But I don't blame him.
One of the things I'm going to pitch you on when we have a bite to eat after this is the 40th anniversary of sports radio is going to be next summer, not 2026, but July of 2027.
That's the WFAN.
WFAN, yep. I was in at the beginning of that. The first voice on the air, by the way, was Susan Waldman, who continues to do Yankee games. It's amazing. And so, you talk about the way that radio has changed things. And just to be a little self-serving here as to what we do, the way that sports fans consume sports changed pretty dramatically once sports radio came along. I'll give you a couple of examples of this, especially with the athletes. The athletes used to hate the columnists. The columnists would write things and they'd go crazy. And as Tony told me, longtime columnist, the thing you do after you rip an athlete is to go show up in the locker room the next game. So make sure they see your face. But, some wouldn't do that. And they, players would have a tirade in the clubhouse. And then comes along sports radio. And now they're hearing the voice of the fans. So the fans are now ripping the players. And very early on, and WFAN had the Mets games. And Howie Rose, who's doing the Mets games on the radio, one of the best to ever do it, great broadcaster, was at that time doing the pre- and the post-game shows. And he was fielding the calls from the fans who were ripping the players. This was a new thing. And one day on the station, Kevin McReynolds, who was going through a rough year with the Mets, his wife called the station on the air and said, "My husband comes home and he's just distraught. Can you please back off him a little bit?" So that's in a way that this format has come along. And, I've done it since it started. I've done talk shows. I've done other things involved in it. Tony used to say it serves the purpose to fire coaches. Maybe it does. Maybe it doesn't.
And you had great success at the national level with him. But don't you always think it's a parochial format
Well,
at its best?
That's what really is the whole story of sports radio. While ESPN has stayed with it for, let's see, the launch was 92. With and Mike Tirico did the first show, as a matter of fact. They have stayed with it all these years, but they are now, after finally realizing, hey, if we just throw TV people on here and tell them to do their thing, it's not going to work.
So they can get through one day, they can get through 2 days, but it's a grind.
So 33 years later, they're hiring radio people to do it. But you're right. I mean, as Tony often says, all sports are local. So, if you're doing a national show and the Commanders are going to play, well, they're going to play Sunday Night Football this week, but when they go play, let's say, the Giants in a couple of weeks, outside of New York and Washington, nobody cares. Both teams stink, and there's no interest. So, how do you do that on a national level? And that's why, having done national radio, I did shows with Tony and Mel, and I loved it. But the love is talking about stuff that matters to you.
To your premise, WFAN, which is an interesting story, they started off with some TV people and realized, no, we need radio people.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
No, not only that. It wasn't just TV people. It was people who weren't local. And this is now I was very
New York.
Yeah, I was very fortunate to get in before anybody realized this. The only way this format works is with people who are either natives or like when Tony started doing local, he'd been a columnist here for 15 years. You got to have somebody who's entrenched in the market, understands the market, understands the importance of the teams. So they said, hey, we're New York City. We're the number one market. We have to get the best national people. And they hired Greg Gumbel to do the mornings. A wonderful person. I worked with him for a year. He knew the names of every intern and would ask about their moms. But he was a TV guy, and he actually hated doing it and left. Well, they got Imus, so he left after a year anyway. Jim Lampley, who actually did kind of, figure it out because he's really smart. But, again, a national guy. They hired Pete Franklin to do the afternoon. Pete Franklin,
Cleveland.
Yeah, legend in Cleveland, and actually from Brooklyn, but at that point he was in his 60s and had no connection to anything that happened in New York in the last 30 years. So, yes, over the years, and that's why Mike and the Mad Dog became the franchise they became, because they were both New Yorkers. And, Francesa could sit there and talk about Mickey Mantle for an hour without any notes. I couldn't do that,
There was a moment, I think it was at NBC4, where they had me out there on some breaking news, and it must have been the time of day. I was the only one in the building. They say, Scott, you got to fill indefinitely. We're going to have you. It may have been the shooting of Steve Scalise in those baseball practice in Delray.
Oh yeah, remember that.
And it was, Scott, go as long as you can, and respectfully, there's not a whole lot of information coming in, but you got to go as long as you can. And if that's not a radio skill. If that's not a radio assignment, I'm not sure what is.
Mm-hmm.
In television, I spent the whole day yesterday, Andy, working on a 90-second television piece that aired at 6:30 on the CBS Evening News. 90 seconds, Andy. That's the break you did. That's the update you just did at the end of a 2-hour show.
Right.
And there's a real estate issue in radio, and you bring in Francesa, you bring in Russo on WFAN. You got guys who could fill space.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And the greats in our industry, no matter your opinion on their programming, they can fill space. Jim Rome, Colin Cowherd, they can fill 3 hours and with an energy and an engagement. Whether you prefer that taste or not, radio is a real estate issue, and WFAN was a novel idea that obviously caught on. But you have to have people who are willing to go 3 hours, not 90 seconds. And if you go to Philadelphia, listen to WIP, EEI in Boston, you can just tell. You're only going to be able to make this work if you have locally rooted, knowledgeable people who understand not just the teams, not just the highways, the area, the culture, but understand the unique persuasion of their callers and their people. A WIP caller is a different breed.
Oh, yeah.
Well, everybody else.
Yeah, it's funny. That station was built on callers. There was a program director named...
Still is, too, right?
But it was Tom Bigby was the program director. And he understood this, and I think if you have the right mix of callers and you handle them properly, getting them in and out, it gives you great pace. And that's something that, as good a guest as you may have, it doesn't really work as well. So the late great John Feinstein was a great radio guest, and a lot of his success was selling his books on radio. And he had come in with a tennis book early on, and he was in the studio, just like you are here. And Tom Bigby came and went to the host, gave him the cut sign. Got to go. But he's in the studio. It's tennis. Get him out of there. We got to get to the Eagles.
Yeah.
That's
we got callers stacked up. Yeah. Want to talk about the Eagles.
But it's the Eagles, because more people would be interested in hearing about the Eagles, even from callers, than someone who would meticulously put together a tennis book. So.
We will do a piece on the 40th anniversary of sports radio, and I think the way you premise it, Andy, is that it is, in this age of mass media, it is a micro-targeting mass medium.
Yeah,
where it is the most local of communications. It's the most local. It's the most community-based of mass media because it's tribal.
Yeah.
And it's best when it's localized, and that's not the muscle memory of broadcasting.
Absolutely. We got Scott MacFarlane in the studio. We're going to finish up with him, including the greatest sitcom line related to Thanksgiving, which was uttered almost 50 years ago. We'll get to that more as we continue. It's the Andy Poland Show, ESPN 630. Bram is coming up at 11 o'clock. We are fortunate to have Scott MacFarlane, the legal correspondent for CBS News, covers justice, in the studio. We've been having a wonderful time talking about radio and the features that he has been doing for CBS Saturday Morning about radio. And I'm older than you, but in 1978, when I guess you were probably a toddler, there was a show called WKRP, which came on. And I was working less than a year into my first job at KPAC Radio in Port Arthur, Texas. And the news director was 40, but like an old 40. His father had been an engineer at KRLD
Did
Radio.
he look like Les Nessman?
No, he didn't. But he didn't look 40. He looked 60 then, and and he was a radio lifer. His father had been an engineer at KRLD in Dallas, and so he knew the business inside and out. And WKRP premiered in September of '78, and he said after watching the first episode, he said, "This is the greatest depiction of radio that I have ever seen." Ever seen. It's amazing. It was a sitcom, which can only do so much in a half an hour, but they nailed it. They got the
Sitcoms rarely nail things.
Yeah.
But that one did.
They did, and they got all the characters right, and it included the newsman, as you mentioned, Les Nessman, who was played by, do you know the name of the actor?
Richard Sanders?
Good. Wow, you know your radio. Yeah, that's his signature role. Did he ever do anything else?
I don't think so.
No, that's what he
top it.
Yeah. So the Thanksgiving episode in the first year is the greatest episode they ever did, and has to rank in the top 10 of sitcom episodes of all time. So here's what was arranged by the station. They wanted to do a Thanksgiving promotion in a mall parking lot where they would drop turkeys out of a helicopter. And they send Les Nessman, played by Richard Sanders, to do a live broadcast of what's going on. And they've got Howard Hessman, who nails the burned-out disc jockey better than anybody ever has, Dr. Johnny Fever, in the studio. And Gordon Jump plays the general manager, Arthur Carlson. I worked for Arthur Carlson's over the years. You probably have as well.
Absolutely.
So this is the scene where the turkeys are being dropped from the helicopter as part of this Thanksgiving promotion from WKRP with Les Nessman reporting live.
Oh, my God, they're talking! Johnny, can you get this? Oh, they're crashing to the earth right in front of our eyes! One just went through the windshield of a parked car! Johnny, this is terrible. The cars running around, pushing each other? Oh, my goodness! Oh, the humanity! Oh, people are running about. The turkeys are hitting the ground like sacks of wet cement. Folks, I don't know how much longer the crowd is running for their lives.
Takeoff on the Hindenburg, which we talked about.
All the humanity.
All the humanity. Yeah. He gets cut off. It goes back to the studio where Dr. Johnny Fever is doing his show, and it ends, and this is how the episode ends, with maybe the greatest sitcom line ever uttered by the big guy, Arthur Carlson, at the end of the show.
Les, are you there? Les isn't there. Thanks for that on-the-spot report, Les. For those of you who just tuned in, the Pinedale Shopping Mall has just been bombed with live turkey. Film at 11.
As God is my witness, I thought turkeys could fly.
I mean, the writing is brilliant, just brilliant in that. You obviously saw it in reruns.
The problem with the reruns is that they had to take out the music.
Yeah.
When it was first run, they were playing contemporary hit music from 1978.
Oh, really?
Dr. Johnny Fever wasn't playing some random instrumental. He was playing something epic from that year. In the reruns, they had to cover that over because of an issue with the rights. But Dr. Johnny Fever, working radio long enough, you know 7 guys like that.
Yeah.
And Arthur Carlson. almost every radio
And the sales
manager.
guy was exactly, it's amazing. So yeah, it is absolutely. So let's. You mentioned you have kids. You have young boys, right?
12 and 15. I'm in the thick of it now.
Wow. And you're now as a justice correspondent. Is there much traveling that you do?
There was.
Yeah.
There was until I think that the velocity of news right now on the Justice Beat, it's better off like a fireman on a fireman's pole being right near the camera here in Washington. There's actually less travel now, which the wife and kids do appreciate.
Yeah.
But it's a 24/7 dynamic. News, covering political news in 2025 is not a thing where you can assume Thanksgiving will be quiet or Saturday or Sunday will be quiet. But I think it's also one of those moments for people like me. We really like tuning into this show from 9 to 11 to take your blood pressure down and get a little bit of deeper reflection.
I appreciate
on
that.
things. The second piece I did on radio, I want to mention it because it's relevant to what we're just discussing. We went up to Frederick and spent time with WFMD, the local station in Frederick. Not their daily news programming. They still do Friday Night Football.
Yeah.
On the radio, and they do that as a way to stay relevant, just to continue monetizing radio. People still listen, and I'm like, but do people still listen? I'm like, yes. And we put two guys out there with a microphone in the bleachers, and we get an audience as far, the dads are in the military. They listen on the stream from North Carolina.
Yeah.
The moms, can't get to the game because she's got a commitment. She'll listen on the way home in the car. And that type of thing, when you stay local and you stay live and you stay relevant in your community, radio's got a wonderful future, no matter what other competition is in the car for ears, no matter if it's streaming or podcast. If you are doing live, local radio, we went to Carlisle, Pennsylvania, where the AM radio station there every noon hour on a weekday reads the obituaries. And it's a very, very depressing segment, but nobody misses it. And if it's late, people call and ask, why are you 2 minutes late on the obituary?
Not the famous obituaries, the local people that passed away.
Who died in town. And it means something to hear your loved one or your neighbor's name on the radio. It means it's validating to hear that person be acknowledged on the radio versus in an email.
That's a service, actually, that I would like, because when the Washington Post for actual paper delivery topped $500, I tapped out, and I just have the online now. Yeah. But they don't have the obituaries, the local obituaries. And if you grew up here like I did, first it started with, that was his grandfather, that was his father, and sadly at my age, it's, people that I know. And
but it's seeing that name, or in this case, hearing that name, it's a different type of validation.
Sure.
And the radio station recognizes that, and it is a communal thing. So they still do that, but you can't do that with automation, Andy.
Yeah.
You can't do that with some syndicate doing the show out of Memphis. It doesn't work in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. So we did a deep dive on how localization in radio really does work.
Speaking of that, I'm not morbid here, but are your parents, are they still alive?
My mother's still with us. She is more energetic than I am.
Okay. And she must be, does she ever miss anything that you do?
No. It's interesting because I get if I don't email her the exact airtime, I get a little snarky note or a phone call. And I try to encourage her, Mom, you could just watch the whole program every day, and that'll solve all your problems. But my mom's a widow, and she's quite proud to be able to live in Phoenix, Arizona, and see her son.
Yeah.
She liked when I was on NBC4. When she came up here to visit, she could see me. Now she can see me from her couch.
Yeah.
And that's one of the nice things about being on the airwaves nationally. You probably enjoyed that with Tony, where people,
your
buddies
you
would
do.
hear
Well, even this, there's a guy who used to live here, and he tweets at me sometimes. This is morning drive for him on the 405 in California.
LA, yeah.
So, the reach of it has totally changed. And unfortunately, we still have a clock in radio, and podcasting, you can go on and on and on, but we were wrapping up. And this again, was a great thrill for me to have you in here, and I look forward to more of your pieces and your day job. I hope that continues in a way that is what you want for the rest of your career.
And I commit we will do a piece on the history of sports radio. It needs to be done, and it is a big anniversary coming up.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna fill you with all kinds of backstories, some which can be told on your airpiece, and some which can't, as we continue. But thanks again to Scott MacFarlane for spending this hour with us, and happy Thanksgiving to you. The Commanders are not playing on Thanksgiving, so if they were, I would do a show on Friday. But since they're not, I will be back on Monday with the probable postmortem on what happens against Denver. Bram will be calling that game, and he's coming up next. It's the Andy Pollin Show saying happy Thanksgiving.